Nostradamus, the French astronomer as well as chemist. He had put together some statements in a very voluminous form, and most of the statements were very cryptic. And they were supposed to be forecasting things that were going to take place in the future. Now, many people follow this as a scripture, that whatever Nostradamus says is nothing but gospel. And there are those who say that it depends on the way you translate certain statements that he has made. Notwithstanding that, we find that it is said that he had forecast the Great Fire of London, the rise of Hitler, the rise of Napoleon, and so forth, and even the Apollo landing in the moon. So, as case may be as it is, let us proceed from there. What did our Indian astrologers, astronomers, or saints and sages have to say? Because India is famous for its astronomy and astrology and soothsayers. Now, although Nostradamus had pinpointed certain events, in Hinduism we find general statements made about what is going to happen in Kali Yuga, the age in which we are living right now. And one of the scriptures from which we get some indication is the Mahabharata itself. On the 9th day of the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, when everybody had retired to their camps, because it was the rule in those days that at sunset, engagement will stop. Everyone will go back into the camps and have a rest. And there would be even exchange from one camp to the other. People would come and speak to each other and go back and so forth and so on. So on the 9th day, on the day on which Dwapara Yuga is supposed to have ended and Kali Yuga is supposed to have begun, there was a discussion between Sri Krishna and the Pandavas. Now let me quickly explain this business of time. As I said, the Dwapara Yuga was supposed to have ended on the 9th day, but because Sri Krishna was around, for as long as he was around, that means up to the time that Dwarka was submerged in water, Dwapara Yuga existed. Only after he passed on did Kali Yuga come into force totally. So the Pandavas were quite perplexed. Here we are in Dwapara Yuga with the manifestation of perfection within ourselves, among us, yet this great war has taken place. So what is it going to be like in the next age, in Kali Yuga? So they asked Sri Krishna this question. To which it is said that Sri Krishna discharged arrows in 4 directions, east, south, west, and north. In Hinduism, it is the custom to go clockwise with everything you do, except when you are removing evil from somebody. You know, when they're removing najal, for example, they turn the train the other direction. And also during the Shraddha ceremony. When the Shraddha ceremony is done, you offer Tilanjali in the east, then in the north, then in the west, and then in the south. All right, so these arrows were discharged, and these 4 brothers, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva, were sent out in each of those directions to retrieve those arrows. So off they went. When Arjuna was on his journey, he came across a very unusual sight. On a branch of a tree there was a cuckoo singing very beautifully. Now, cuckoos are reputed to be great singers, beautiful, throated birds. It was singing very beautifully, and also cuckoos are supposed to only eat grain and insects. But this cuckoo was biting away at the flesh of a rabbit. And Arjuna was amazed by this. How is this happening? On the other hand, Bhima, on his journey to retrieve the arrow, came across 5 wells. There was a well in the center, and around it there were 4 others. Now, the wells that were around the center well were overflowing with water, and yet the center one was dry. And he could understand this mechanism as well. Nakula, on the other hand, came across a cow that was licking its calf, a newly born calf, to such an extent that the calf was now bleeding. And it was going to bleed to death, as a matter of fact. Sahadeva, on the other hand, saw a boulder coming down a steep incline, taking everything in its path, bringing down trees and other stones and so forth and so on. But it came to a standstill against a clump of grass, which was actually against physics. How could this be? It was destroying trees and so forth and so on, and yet a clump of grass had stopped it. So when they returned to Krishna, Sri Krishna asked them, how did it go? And of course they related their experience. To Arjuna's experience, Sri Krishna said that this scenario that he experienced, actually he says that in Kali Yuga, saints and holy men will utter sweet words, but at the same time they will exploit their fellow men. And that is what is happening this year, presently. This is what is happening. There are people who claim to be holy men, claim to be pandits, brahmanas, etc., and they speak lots of things. They quote from the scriptures and so forth and so on, and yet they are exploiting people. There are those pandits, for example, who are not actually brahmanas anymore. They are Vaishyas, because they do calculations. No, Vaishyas are supposed to calculate their profit and loss. So these pandits, they will calculate. For example, if you want to have a wedding, they will first ask, where you are having a wedding? And you say, at such and such a venue. And they know immediately that venue. Canara Hall, for example, charges 38,000 rand. Okay, so have you bought your jewelry? And you say, yes, I bought the jewelry. How much do you pay for jewelry, etc.? So they calculate all this. And based on that, they will give you a quotation as to how much it will cost for them to conduct the wedding, which is not right. At the same time, while I'm at that, I must mention that at the same time we have to be cognizant of the fact that without the pandit, the wedding cannot go on. We spend thousands of rand in all our functions, thousands of rand on entertainment, but the pandit is given a meager handout. So we have to be very careful about that. Anyhow, so that was a reference to Arjuna's experience. Then to Bhima, he said that whatever you have seen actually indicates what is going to happen in Kali Yuga as well. That is, the rich and the poor will live side by side. Okay? But the rich will be overflowing with wealth, and yet they will care very little for those around them, especially those who are in dire need. Is it ringing a bell? Then, as far as Nakula's experience, he said that in Kali Yuga, parents, as well as grandparents, mind you, will love the children to such an extent that they will spoil them to death. And we look around us today, and that is exactly what is happening. What we are doing, we think whatever we are doing is showing love to our children, but we are actually killing them. So out of attachment, parents will be blinded to all the deeds of their children. And grandparents as well. And this is the tragedy. Okay? Parents, while the children are around, will lavish them with love and so have so much attachment for them. And when the children marry and go away, then this love is now shoved upon the grandchildren to such an extent that the parents lose control of the children. Finally, to Sahadeva's experience, Sri Krishna said that in Kali Yuga, people will rush to their doom. They will trample over friends and relatives and even holy men. And the small name of God will be the saving grace. This is the clump of grass. The small name of God, Ram, for example, Shiva, just those names. And we have the facility for you to use that. This is why this ashram is here. But hardly anyone comes. We only come on a Saturday to clap hands and go away. But apart from that, what are we doing? We have other functions, we have classes here, we have Ekadashi, Vrat that is observed. No one comes. Sometimes it's just one person and the record player. That is all. And yet it is said that this Ekadashi is a life-saving thing. Right, so that is as far as the Mahabharata is concerned. But it doesn't end there. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is another Vaishnava scripture which tells a great deal about the life of Sri Krishna, in the 12th canto, chapter 2, verses 1 onwards, we read the following. In Kali Yuga, there will be the decline of religion, truthfulness, mercy, lifespan, physical strength, and memory. All these will decline. And that is exactly what is happening. Wealth will be a sign of one's good birth. How often it is we measure a person by his birth. Because he is dressed shabbily, we look down upon him. And yet, within him could be a great devotee, greater than any one of us sitting in this room. But because he is poor, we look down upon him. So wealth will be a sign of good birth and proper behavior. Law and justice will be based on one's power. And we see that happening as well. People are buying justice for themselves based on their wealth and power. The next one. Men and women will cohabit out of superficial attraction, which is happening. And success in business will depend on deceit. How often that happens. And womanliness and manliness will be judged on one's sex expertise. This I'm quoting directly from the scripture. It's not what I am saying. Okay. And a Brahmana will be recognized merely by the thread that he wears around his shoulder. Next one. One's spiritual status will be determined by external symbols. Right? And people wearing these big Rudraksha malas, and Tripundara from temple to temple, chandan on the ears and the nose, all that kind of thing. Right? So one's spiritual status will be determined by external symbols. Also, people will change from one religion, one religious order to another. Not only from one religion, but from one religious order to another. And one who is an expert in verbal gymnastics will be said to be a great scholar. When I was in the Defense Force, we used to have guest speakers at our conferences, which used to be held once a year. And of course, these were great guys, great orators, and they would come, over three hours, over a couple of days, 1 hour here and 2 hours there, and so forth and so on. They would give their speeches. And very often at the end of it, I would ask my colleagues, they would say, "Oh, what a great speaker he was." And I would ask, "What did he say?" "No, he's a great speaker." You see, this is the thing. That is even here. People come to us sometimes and say, "Oh, we enjoyed your talk today." To start off with, our talk is not meant for enjoyment. It is for learning. So what have you learned is the question. Okay. Then in Kali Yuga, hypocrisy will be taken as a virtue. If you can play tricks, then it is a great virtue. And marriage will be by verbal agreement. That's happening. People are cohabiting by verbal agreement. There's no ceremonies being performed. Some are living together for years and then getting married, and so forth and so on. One will be fit to appear in public merely after taking a bath. That is all. You can appear totally naked in public, it will be all right, as long as you have taken a bath. And we are quite near that presently. So these are the predictions for Kali Yuga, which are all coming true. But what are we doing about it, is the question. Are we going to just accept things as they are, or are we prepared to make a difference? It's a slight thing that my time is up. So let us think about this. All these things are happening. It's not something that has been dreamt of. They are happening all. But it is for us to make a change in ourselves, in our families, and finally in the communities in which we live. Okay, so that is as far as prediction is concerned. I just want to make a few observations. Firstly, this song that we sang, Ajiya Shubhodin, is a Bengali song. And in Bengali, all the letter A is pronounced as O. Right? So if we sing Jayo Jayo, then it must be Ramo Krishna. It can't be Jayo Jaya Rama Krishna. Then we're mixing it up. I'm saying this because next year Swami Suhitananda will be coming here. He's a Bengali himself. Okay? So let us get it right. Jayo Jayo Rama Krishna Ram. Then look, all these words that have A in them, the letter A in them, should be O. If it has an A with a stroke of it, then it is A. It is elongated. But as long as that is not there, it shouldn't be done. Secondly, I've also noticed that people use spit to turn over the pages of the prayer book. Now, we must understand that the prayer book actually is a scripture. It is not a novel, because in it there are mantras, powerful mantras, some of them. And in it there are pictures of deities. So if we can be applying spit to that, it is totally disrespect. So as far as possible, we should avoid applying spit to the book. And also, we should avoid walking over the prayer book. I see that happening among children as well. So parents should teach the children that this should not be done. It is totally disrespectful. So with those few words, I thank you. Om Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.